Hello, everyone. This is your host, Sergeant First Class Arslan Khan with the Warrant Officer Recruiting Company. And today we'll be exploring the 353 Tango Warrant Officer Military Occupation Specialty. Our special guest is none other than CW5 Darris Richardson from the INSCOM headquarters. And he will be talking to us about what it means to be a warrant officer in the 353 Tango Warrant Officer Specialty. Chief Richardson, thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to hear your input about all of the different ways that 353 Tangos contribute to mission accomplishment.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for hosting this. I'm always willing to talk about the benefits of becoming a warrant officer in the United States Army.
For any potential applicants listening, we will ask questions that most of us would have when deciding to pursue a career as a 353 Tango warrant officer. We'll just go ahead and jump right into them then, to get your take on some of the most crucial questions that are always asked. First, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences as a warrant officer and how you feel about serving in your particular specialty?
Well, I've been a warrant officer for over 21 years now, and honestly, I would say that each year has been more exciting and more rewarding than the last. You know, when you're a warrant officer, you have a much larger influence on what you do on a day-to-day basis when it comes to your particular specialty. So, I would recommend to anyone that they become a warrant officer in the U.S. Army.
What do warrant officers in your specialty do in a normal span of a duty day when they start out as a new warrant officer in the cohort, and how do those responsibilities evolve into more responsibilities later on?
Well, most of the company grade positions in our particular specialty, the WO1s and the CW2s, are in the tactical army. So those are mostly FORSCOM units. And what you do in the normal duty day is you monitor and direct the maintenance and integration of military intelligence systems maintenance. So you make sure that our program of record systems and our quick reaction capabilities are all integrated in a way that allows the normal operator to answer his commander's requests and requests for information. Later on, as you proceed to be a CW3 and get into the field grades, some of those positions are still in the tactical army, but a lot of them are also in TRADOC, so a lot of them are in instructor positions, getting the force ready to understand their responsibilities, and that includes both enlisted warrant officer and even sometimes regular officers when it comes to the classes that they require before they assume command. So as you move further and further up the ladder, your interaction with soldiers actually becomes a little bit less, but how can I put this the right way? Your influence on your particular cohort and your MOS within that cohort is actually much greater, because then you start looking at the policies to make sure that everyone understands how things change within your particular job skill, how you keep up the speed and what's required for those coming behind you to be ready to perform those same duties.
Why should someone pursue this type of commission, and what are some of the benefits they take into the civilian world?
As I mentioned before, I would actually recommend to anyone to become a warrant officer, and I have written letters of recommendation for both enlisted members and commissioned officers, company grade officers, who had, after their time of service was coming up for their requirements to be a regular officer, had decided that, they fit more of the mold of what a warrant officer should be and do. So, anytime that someone has that particular commission, they understand that what they're going to be doing is technical in nature. They're going to be getting deep into their actual job skill. But, I would also say that, leadership is an important aspect of what a warrant officer does. So, what you're going to take into the civilian world is not only based upon what you do as a job, but the leadership skills that you acquire over the years being the lead person for that particular job in your field.
As a young staff sergeant working in an MI systems or IEW shop, what advice would you give them on what types of jobs they need to start working towards in their enlisted careers that will help them to achieve a commission as a 353 Tango warrant officer?
I would recommend to all enlisted soldiers that they not shy away from jobs that involve responsibility. So any of the leadership positions is a good position to hold. While you should also remain obviously technically proficient, what separates you from the old specialist ranks is the fact that you are not only technically proficient, but you do have that leadership ability. So I would say anything that deals with the instructor realm, the basic instructor course, small group leadership, anything that allows them to get in front of their peers and subordinates to lead the group, to instruct, because that is a major portion of what warrant officers do, is training the NCOs on what to expect from the enlisted soldiers. So the warrant officer teaches the NCO the specific technical aspects of their job. And when I say that, I mean your daily duties, not particularly the tactical duties, but sometimes those too. But they also, they need to know everything they can about how to properly instruct so that, the knowledge is transferred correctly.
What types of training can an NCO benefit from when considering to pursue a career in the 353 Tango Warrant Officer Military Occupation Specialty?
Specifically for 353 Tangos, I would recommend that they look for training that involves every aspect of our particular job. So they would have to look at training on strategic, tactical, avionic, and commercial equipment. So any training that they can find is definitely for the better. What happens is sometimes in MI system shops, you'll get to a shop that is almost strictly the primary mission equipment for avionics. So, if you're not familiar with that particular equipment, it could be a problem if you get to that shop as, let's say, a CW3 or CW4, and your enlisted soldiers pretty much know more than you when it comes to those systems. That's never a good position to be in. So the more information you have about every different type of equipment that MI has, the better.
What is the most common mistake made by applicants applying to the cohort, and how can it be avoided?
The most common mistake I see made by applicants when they're applying is that they fail to stress their leadership skills and their leadership time. What I would do is make sure that any time it can be mentioned, especially within your resume, also on your letters of recommendation, they also make reference to any leadership time that you have, because the expectation is that you have been working on the systems. That is what you do as a MI systems maintainer and integrator. What is different, which kind of makes you stand out, is those leadership abilities and the time you've had honing them and utilizing them to the benefit of the Army.
What do board members value the most in a submitted packet? And could you describe the process that takes place when a packet is reviewed by the board?
Well, it's really hard to pinpoint what each board member would value the most, simply because each board member is an individual, and despite the instructions that are given to the board, what they key in on can sometimes vary widely. One of the things that definitely you do know they'll be looking at, though, is your actual evaluation and how you are, how your boxes are checked. If you have most of your boxes checked in the best block, whatever it may be at the time, because I know they change, that's what they're looking for. They will also look to the written part of the evaluation, but remember, a lot of times on the board they'll have a number of packets that they have to look at. So if the boxes are checked correctly, if they're all left justified, then that's the thing they'll look at if they can quickly. and then move on to the next thing in your particular packet. Now, the board process itself, like I mentioned, a lot of times there could be a number of packets. Luckily for our MOS, there's not that many people, so there shouldn't be that many packets. But they're never just looking at just your MOS. What they do is, the different MOSs are addressed during each board. Not all of them for every board, but a lot of them. And so they'll be looking at a lot of packets that are also outside of their normal MOS. So, whatever sets yours apart is definitely better. So that way they can quickly go through their checklist, either whether it's in their head or written down, and hit each particular thing that they're looking for.
Thank you, sir. That was a lot of great information. How long is the warrant officer applicant school, and how long is the warrant officer basic course for 353 tangos?
Well, I'm sure the walk school and the warrant officer basic course have changed a little bit since I went through all those years ago. But I pretty much think they're generally the same. So when I went through the warrant officer candidate school was roughly about 2 months long. The first week over in the regular part of the school, and then you kind of move over to the actual course. There's a process for moving over. I'm not sure if they still do that or not. And then the warrant officer basic course, which is held at Fort Huachuca, it was about 3 months long. And we went through the Common Core, and we spoke a little bit, or did a little bit, with our own particular MOS. But the basic course itself is, for your particular branch. So it is an MI warrant officer basic course. It's not specific for 353 tangos.
Thank you, sir. What advice would you give to an NCO selected for attendance to warrant officer candidate school on how to prepare for it and the warrant officer basic course?
Honestly, the best advice I would give to an NCO is, to be physically ready, because really what WOX is all about is not only physical fitness and becoming a leader, but is also, school attendance. And, when you have to sit and learn about the general aspects of management for the United States Army. So, the more physically fit you are, the more sleep you get, the better able you are to kind of sit in a school environment when you're not out doing actual physical training. So you can understand what's going to be expected of you once you're a warrant commissioned officer.
Once someone has graduated warrant officer candidate school and been promoted to Warrant Officer 1, do they have any input as to where they will be stationed? If so, what is the process for selecting a specific duty station?
Well, with the implementation of the AIMS assignment program, there's definitely been a change when it comes to selecting a specific duty station. But normally that's done, you put in your request before you actually attend WOX. So, if everything works the way it's supposed to, when you're graduating and you graduate after WOX and then WOBC, you already know what assignment you're heading towards. There shouldn't be a question at that particular point. But that process is done between you and your branch manager before you ever attend.
Thank you for your insight, sir. When approaching commanders and senior warrant officers for letters of recommendation, what steps should an NCO take in order to ensure receiving a stellar recommendation?
Of course, the best way to make sure you're receiving a stellar recommendation is to make sure you've done stellar work. If they already know your name and they know who you are, what kind of job you do, they will have no problem whatsoever writing a letter of recommendation. If for some reason you don't have a senior warrant officer within your formation and you need to look outside of your unit for a letter, you should be able to show them via your information packet and via interview, whether you have to do it in person or say telephonic or VTC. that you're ready to take the lead and you know exactly what you're doing in your job field.
What is family life like as a 353 Tango, and how can we best take care of our families as we embark on our quest to become one?
Well, most 353 tangos that I know have a fairly stable family life because you're kind of in control of how you manage and how you maintain and integrate these systems. So if you have a plan developed, you can make sure that your plan, your actual work plan, still fits in well with how you have your day-to-day family life. Sometimes, of course, there are things that'll happen that'll disrupt even the best laid plans. But if you're a good planner, you'll be able to manage both your family life and your actually day-to-day job.
Thank you, sir. This is a two-part question. When creating your resume, what is the best way to highlight some of the skills you possess, and what are some of the most critical skills to highlight? Furthermore, what is some of the most critical training to highlight?
Well, on your resume, I think sometimes it's critical to have a specific section that does highlight skills you might possess that are, different from your peers, and also some of the certifications that you have that are above and beyond what are normally expected. And as for what's the most critical training to highlight, I think that's pretty similar to one of the other questions asked before, but I would definitely highlight any training that is leadership oriented. I would also highlight any training that is job specific but not offered to everyone. So if that's something that you have, I definitely would take a chance to highlight that and maybe move it into a section all by itself.
What are some of the most important things to talk about in your resume summary page, and how do board members view these comments?
Well, I think one of the most important things to talk about in the resume summary page is how you're going to utilize the skills that you've already learned as an enlisted member and non-commissioned officer to benefit the Army once you do become a warrant officer. The board members definitely look at that in a good light. And since a lot of times, like I said, there'll be a number of packages that they have to look at. The resume summary page is really almost the most important on your resume. So take the time to craft as best of a summary as you can.
What are some of the most important certifications and training experiences warrant officers should pursue in the course of their career in this warrant officer military occupation specialty, and why?
Well, this is one area where things have actually changed quite a bit since I became a warrant officer, and that's kind of Army-wide. So what I'm talking about here is there are certifications that are actually required now that were not required when I became a warrant. And there is different things that are available that weren't available when I became a warrant. So, if when you're an enlisted member, if you don't already have Sec Plus, of course, you're not going to be able to work on most of the systems that we have. If you don't already have an operating system under your belt, you also won't be able to. But once you become a warrant, if you don't have the basic instructor course already, I would definitely recommend that. The capability development course is definitely important. There's almost an expectation now that you will have had the digital intelligence master gunners course. So if you can get that, definitely that is something to get so that they understand that you have a good understanding of architecture and how things are connected, not only within MI, but out to other branches. So how our systems connect to mission command systems, how ours connect to artillery, that kind of thing. I would also, if possible, look at getting any kind of staff course that's available, and that's only to better develop your leadership abilities, because that way your leadership can see that you understand that as you progress up the ranks, you'll have different positions that require different leadership abilities.
Thank you, sir. On the subject of promotions, starting out from W1, how long will it take in this warrant officer military occupation specialty to progress through each rank to reach CW5?
Well, it's the Army that really changes this. I don't think it's specific to the 353 Tango MOS. This is something that is, by branch and by needs of the Army, how promotions take place. What I'm saying is that, sometimes there can be ceilings on the numbers of personnel that can be promoted, and that's just based upon need. How many authorized positions are there versus, how many are actually needed. So, generally speaking, from W1 or W01 to CW2 is, of course, 2 years. And then from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and CW4 to CW5 can span between 4 and 6 years between each particular rank. If you stay the full course, if you're in for the full career as a warrant officer, it'll take you between possibly 15 to 20 years to become a CW5.
As one retires from the military, are there lifelong organizations that someone can join to champion issues concerning warrant officers exclusively?
Sure, the U.S. Army Warrant Officers Association is our particular professional organization, and their job is to provide advocacy for warrant officers. That's all they do. So their leadership is comprised of both retired and active duty warrant officers. And there is a newsletter that they put out, and they lobby in Congress and in the Pentagon for warrant officer initiatives. So, you can become a member of several of the individual organizations that make up that full organization. So they have different chapters. Let's say, like Arizona has the Silver chapter, where they have a full body from president, vice president, secretary that makes sure their chapter is keyed on local initiatives that warrant officers can affect and that do affect those warrant officers.
Are there opportunities warrant officers have to give back to their communities in this particular specialty? If so, could you tell us some of your experiences?
Well, besides those things that I brought up about the local chapters of the Warrant Officer Association, there are other things that warrant officers can do to give back to their communities, especially as a 353 Tango, because what we learn is electronics, computer theory, that sort of thing specific to MI, but also as a general nature. So, as an example. There is a retired warrant officer, one of the ones that I actually wrote a recommendation for. He did his 20 years of service. He retired, and he went back to his community, and he is now the head of the electronics department at the college in his particular area. And one of the things they're doing is, they have certain things in the college classes that they do, like competitions for Christmas lights during the parades and such. And he makes sure that his students have a very good understanding of basic electronics and electrical components. And in this particular year, as a matter of fact, I know they won their competition in the local area. But he also does other things like making sure the electrical grid within their college campus is okay, that sort of thing. So there's always plenty of things that you can do with the knowledge that you acquire as a 353 Tango to give back to your community.
Why should someone compete to be a part of the 353 Tango military occupation specialty, and how does it benefit the nation?
Well, with the way things are set up today, most of our intelligence mission is done on electronic systems. So it is certainly a benefit to the Army and the nation to be a 353 Tango, because without that particular structure, there's almost no way in today's society to get the information where it needs to be. Those questions will always still be asked from the commander, but the way that information needs to return to them in an expedient manner pretty much has to be done on some type of information system. So, there'll always be a need for the 353 Tango MOS.
As a mentor in the cohort, what additional advice would you offer a potential applicant?
Well, I know a lot of the advice I gave stressed the leadership aspect, and I don't want to detract from the technical aspects of our particular MOS. That is extremely important. I just wanted to emphasize that, what would set you apart from your peers is that leadership aspect. I would say any potential candidate has to understand that as a 353 Tango, you're just a little bit different from the other MIMOSs in that the technical aspect of what you do also has a physical nature. So you're actually sometimes touching the equipment, at least up until W2, maybe even W3 in certain locations. So, you will have there's a physical nature to our job. It's not just all mental. But as long as you understand that and you're ready to provide whatever you can to the Army, I think you'll make a great warrant officer.
Chief Richardson, thank you so much for letting us have some of your valuable time. I'm sure that the insight that you've provided will prove invaluable to the ambitious non-commissioned officers looking to help the Army and the nation by continuing their military careers as a 353 Tango warrant officer. For those of our listeners out there, if you're choosing to pursue this career, I have only one thing to say. As always, go warrant now.